Well, thanks for joining me, Dan. I appreciate your time this morning and taking the time to meet with me. First of all, like I said, the theme of our interview series is what's in your cup. And I wanted to just ask you briefly what your favorite beverage is, and maybe what do you like to drink in the morning when you wake up?
Yeah, I'm a coffee guy in the morning. I only take about a half a cup, but it's kind of that taste that gets me waking up this morning. Got my Navy cup with me this morning. Still.
Okay.
And,
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way. Can't wake up without a cup of coffee.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was I was a Navy pilot, and on the carrier they always had a pot of coffee brewing, and we'd have early morning launches or you'd have all nighters, and I never developed a taste for coffee until I went to the Pentagon or over to the Navy Annex over there, and then it was kind of a social deal, and then all of a sudden I developed the taste, and I've been drinking it ever since.
Yeah, for me it was the all-nighters in college. You can't get through them without a few cups of coffee.
Yeah, a little caffeine stimulant. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thanks again for joining me, Dan. And, you mentioned that you're a Navy pilot. I wanted to ask you a little bit about were a Navy pilot. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your background and talk about how you got interested in politics and, how you decided you wanted to run for the 19th District.
Yeah, well, thanks, Rob. It's a good question. Having been in the military, we were never allowed to participate in any political activities while in the military. So I was in the Navy for 22 years and retired. We went to Minnesota for a job opportunity and got asked by someone there if I would ever be interested in running for politics, somebody from my church, actually. And so that was kind of the first introduction. I went to a meeting and at that meeting got to meet one of the individuals that was running for governor for the state at that point. And so it really intrigued me that you could be involved in grassroots politics at that level to really determine who are going to be the leaders in the state and to be able to have a voice, to be able to vet the candidates and then really kind of be a help to get those people who you really felt like would best represent your values and had the character that is needed to guide our country. So that was kind of my introduction into the political arena. My wife and I have been engaged in that process for about 20 years now. So it's been one of those things that I'm passionate about. And when we came to this area, I had a long political career in the Minnesota arena. But when we came to this area, I hadn't really anticipated that. Very conservative district. And I thought, here's a place where we can just sit back and enjoy the fruit of good conservatism in the district. And then I was kind of shocked when Congressman Rooney started sponsoring some bills like the carbon tax bill and some of those things that don't make for good economic sense in my view. And so that was one of the things that caught my attention. And then later on, he ended up opposing President Trump on a few issues, and that's what made me re-engage.
Gotcha. So it sounds like in a few ways you'd like to shift priorities from where Francis Rooney was taking the district's priorities and aligning himself in Congress. And it sounds like you have different ideas of what you'd like to achieve with your role in Congress, and maybe talk about those priorities if you are elected our next congressman.
Well, I think one of the things that he did have the right priority on was cleaning up our waterways. And that's one of the pluses that his two terms in office have been given to this district. Some of the funding that has come through, and part of that is Governor DeSantis' influence as well. So that's something I would want to continue, but I am strong. On my website, I've got 7 issues that I'm passionate about: economic opportunity, passionate about the Constitution, the Second Amendment. I'm strong pro-life. I believe firmly that life begins at conception. I believe in limited government and national security. And because of my military background, I have a real passion and a desire to have an impact at the national security level now with this whole advent of China and the unveiling of its real agenda. It's become, to me, kind of a front burner issue. It's one of those things that we need to deal with now. And it is one of those things that I believe that we have to focus on and that we have to kind of plug the dam, as it were, immediately. This is not something that can go on for another 4 or 5 years. This is something that needs to be addressed immediately.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure if I hit your question.
No, that was perfect actually, because I'm kind of looking for broad, open-ended answers on these questions because they're broad questions and
Yeah.
they're just trying to, get a sense of each of the candidates, and I think that helps us understand, where your priorities would lie in office. But of course, the last question that I had wanted to ask this morning was based on our current state of affairs here in the United States, and I mean, right now, I think looking at this country, you could see that there are three major crises. There's the pandemic, there's widespread economic damage from the pandemic and unemployment, and then there's social unrest. We've seen protests on the news. And so, once again, this is an open-ended question, but how do you see your role in Congress as potentially allowing you to address and try to fix some of these major issues our country's facing?
Well, I think one of the first things that we've talked about a little bit on the campaign trail is identifying those industries that China has taken from the United States are fundamental to our core needs, not just economically, but on the defensive side, and bringing those industries back to the United States and augmenting them as need be in order to get them established in our country so that we have those resources stationed here. So there's no more of the issue of denying us antibiotics by China, that we had those made here and we are not beholden to anyone in that process. And then in terms of critical materials that we need for our defense industry and for other industries in the United States, that those that are being made overseas now in China and foreign countries are brought back here so that we can continue that manufacturing base to continue to grow that. And I think that's one of the things that President Trump has done a tremendous job at in reinvigorating our economy and bringing those resources back here to be the economic engine that we need in this whole process. The civil unrest, I think, is one of those things that we need to address in the long term. I know I pick on China a lot, but when you take a look, and I'm reading through the book called The 100-Year Marathon, and I would encourage any American to kind of read to find out who China really is. And one of the things that they have instituted is a Confucius Institute in our higher education institutions, Yale, Harvard, some of those other ones, where they're giving scholarships and quotas to try and paint the picture that China is very benign, that they are very easygoing, and when in fact they are trying to undermine our society, and they do it from within and from without. So we've got adversaries through the Marxist, the communist movement, those that have been instigating through our educational systems, those things that have created some of this unrest. And those, I think, in terms of what President Trump has done, is to identify the funding, declaring them a terrorist organization, identify who's funding those, and help us get to the kind of the core of what's driving this. Because I don't believe that it is a majority or even a strong minority of the people, but I think there are instigators who are put into positions to undermine and create the unrest and the chaos in some of our major cities that are creating this dissension. Now, is there a political bias? Is there systemic racism? I do not believe that there is systemic racism in the United States. I believe that there have been pockets where there have been instances of racism, and the correct mode of operation for that is to take those individual circumstances, take them through the court system, and then deal with them justly, and to give those people who have not had justice. But that doesn't mean you go in and you burn down people's businesses and you destroy police and you defund the police. All of those things are necessary for a society that is looking for peace and prosperity. So I believe that one of the things that we need to really go after is our educational institutions, to make sure that those institutions are talking about civic responsibility. They're talking about what makes America, and that's personal responsibility, opportunity for every individual that comes in. And if there is some type of bias or racism that is encountered during that time frame, how do we address that in a peaceable way as addressed by the Constitution? First Amendment, peaceable assembly. and the right for redress to your government. Those things are fundamental, that we need to follow our constitutional rights in order to maintain those liberties.
Well, Dan, if you could, I mean, that was a perfect answer. And like I said, look, you know, a nice broad answer to help us understand a lot of your ideas, priorities, and focus, what your focus would be if you are elected our next congressman. What I wanted to give you this time at the end of the call to just kind of help us understand what differentiates you from the other candidates in the race, and maybe kind of give a shout out to people who might be putting your name on the ballot come August 18th.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I think the things that differentiate me from the other 8 candidates that are running is experience, leadership. I have 22 years of military leadership in terms of being an officer in charge of an F-18 squadron, having flown off a carrier 2.5 years, homeported out of Japan. I've seen foreign countries, and I've been in foreign countries, seeing how they operate. I was 3 years in Washington, D.C. in an executive position doing plans and policy, and then 3 years as an executive officer for a weapons test squadron in China Lake, California, with a top secret compartmentalized security clearance. Because of that, I was exposed to some of the mining, the intellectual property theft, and the things that China has been operating in, and Russia, in this whole process. So I've got that base behind me. And then when elected into the House of Representatives in Minnesota, I served for 4 years in the majority and then 4 years in the minority. Nobody else running has that experience in terms of serving in the minority and then having been elected into the executive leadership and then into the minority whip position, was able to get the voice of the conservative out loud while both the House and the Senate were controlled by the Democrats. And so I've got the experience of advocating for conservative values while in a stressful situation in the minority. And we held those things back. We held back the tax increases and the agenda that they had, because we had a great governor, Governor Tim Pawlenty, and we were able to maneuver. So the experience that I bring to the table is both leadership, in-depth experience in both the majority and the minority in the political arena, so I can hit the ground running day one in Washington, D.C. I know what it means to serve the people of the United States and the people of my district. I served under the oath of the Constitution for 30 years, and I never broke that oath. And to me, that's an oath that continues to carry on until I die. And so my pledge is that when I go to Washington, that I will join the Freedom Caucus there, because I believe that is the one group that really has the Constitution at its core value and will do everything they can to rein in large government and to bring the Constitution to the forefront. That is really the anchor for our society. So I've put a lot of these issues onto my website at seversonforcongress.com, and I've got what's called the Severson 7, and it's got all of the 7 listed items that I prioritize, that I speak to on my website. So if you really want to find out where I stand on Second Amendment, where I stand on illegal immigration, those issues, please go to the website there and give me a call if you have other questions, and I'd love to take a call from you and have this discussion. Personally, we're coming into the last couple of weeks before the election for the primary, and I need your vote. I need your vote to win. We have been, one of those campaigns has been grassroots, and we really believe that it is the people who have to make this choice. One of the big differences I'll also add is that we've got a couple millionaires in this race, and you can see it when you go to your mailbox and you see these stacks of flyers that are coming in, and they're bashing each other, and so yes and no, that's what politics is. It tends to be kind of a blood sport. But what we need to focus on is people have bought the election for these last 2 election cycles. The last 2 representatives that we have had from this district have bought the seat. And we need to look past all of the flyers, look past all the commercials, and say, what do these individuals actually stand for? Are they going to be the person that we need in Congress to be a strong conservative voice for a very strong conservative district? This is a plus 12, plus 13 red district. We should have a strong conservative voice that supports the president, his agenda, and really supports the Constitution. That's what I'm about. And so I just want to ask for your support on August 18th, seversonforcongress.com, and I would love to talk with you if you have any questions. Dan Severson, and Top Gun for Congress. Thanks so much, Rob.